The October morning dawned crisp and golden over Nashville, Tennessee, where Jennifer Matthews stood in her walk-in closet, smoothing down the cream silk blouse she'd chosen for what was supposed to be the celebration of a lifetime. At 34, she'd built what everyone admired: a marriage to James Matthews, tech entrepreneur and self-made millionaire, 2 beautiful children, and a sprawling estate in Belle Meade that spoke of success and stability. The house hummed with the energy of preparation, caterers bustling through the kitchen, florists arranging centerpieces for the anniversary party that would host 200 of Nashville's elite that evening. Jennifer descended the curved staircase, her heels clicking against imported marble, and found her children in the breakfast nook. 8-year-old Sophie sat hunched over her cereal, dark hair falling across her face, while 6-year-old Marcus built a tower from his waffle pieces, oblivious to the syrup dripping onto the custom tablecloth. The autumn sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a scene that belonged in a lifestyle magazine: the successful family, the beautiful home, the illusion of perfection. "Mommy, is Daddy coming to breakfast?" Sophie asked, her voice small and hopeful, in a way that made Jennifer's chest tighten. James had been distant for months, always another meeting, another business trip, another reason to slip away from family dinners and bedtime stories. Jennifer had attributed it to stress, to the demands of running a company worth $40 million, to the pressure of maintaining their position in Nashville's upper echelons. "He's working, sweetheart," Jennifer replied, forcing brightness into her voice as she poured coffee from the French press. "But tonight's our big party. He'll be there for that." The kitchen smelled of fresh pastries and expensive coffee, but underneath it Jennifer detected something else: the faint scent of her husband's cologne lingering from hours earlier, mixed with something floral she didn't recognize. She dismissed the thought, focusing instead on the clipboard the event coordinator thrust into her hands, questions about seating arrangements and champagne selections demanding immediate answers. James appeared in the doorway at 9:30, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. At 42, he maintained the lean, polished appearance that had first attracted Jennifer at a charity gala 12 years ago, back when he was building his software company from nothing, and she was working as a marketing consultant. He barely glanced at the children as he grabbed his briefcase, his phone already pressed to his ear. "I'll be back by 6 to get ready," he said, the words directed at no one in particular. "Make sure everything's perfect, Jennifer. We have investors coming tonight." She watched him leave, the familiar ache of loneliness settling in her stomach. Their marriage had become a performance, beautiful on the surface but hollow beneath, and she'd become complicit in maintaining the facade. Tonight's anniversary party wasn't about celebrating 15 years together. It was about showcasing James's success, about networking and appearances, and maintaining the image he'd cultivated so carefully. The morning dissolved into a blur of preparations. Jennifer coordinated with the caterers, approved the final floral arrangements, and supervised the installation of a temporary bar on the terrace. She barely noticed when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number at 2 o'clock. "You deserve to know the truth before tonight. Check James's office safe. Code is Sophie's birthday." Jennifer stared at the message, her heart beginning to pound. She'd learned long ago not to snoop, not to question, to trust the life they'd built together. But something in those words, the specificity of the safe code, the timing just hours before their celebration, made her hand tremble as she deleted the message. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows of James's home office, a room she rarely entered, decorated in leather and mahogany to project authority and wealth. The safe sat behind a false panel in the bookshelf, exactly where the message had implied she'd find it. Jennifer's fingers shook as she entered the numbers, 0823, Sophie's birthday, and the heavy door swung open. Inside, beneath stacks of legal documents and investment portfolios, she found a red leather folder. The photographs inside showed James with a woman Jennifer didn't recognize, younger, beautiful, laughing in his arms at what looked like a beach resort. But it was the documents beneath that made Jennifer's vision narrow. Property deeds, transfer papers, legal agreements, systematically moving their assets into offshore accounts, and trusts that bore only James's name. The final document was dated that morning, a legal separation agreement already prepared, outlining terms that would leave Jennifer with almost nothing, just the old family ranch in rural Kentucky that had belonged to her grandmother, a property so run down it was essentially worthless. The ranch she'd inherited 5 years ago and barely thought about, tucked away in Hopkins County, hours from Nashville's glittering society. Jennifer's hands went numb as she read the custody arrangements James's lawyers had drafted. He would have primary custody. She would have supervised visitation. He documented everything. Times she'd been late picking up the children, a prescription for anxiety medication, even a wine glass at lunch characterized as day drinking. He'd been building a case against her for months, maybe years, preparing to dismantle her life with the same ruthless efficiency he brought to business negotiations. The sound of the children's laughter drifted up from the backyard, where the nannies supervised their play. Jennifer looked around the office at the awards and photos celebrating James's achievements and realized she'd been erased from this narrative long ago. She was a prop in his success story, useful for appearances but ultimately disposable. She photographed every document with trembling hands, uploaded them to a cloud account James didn't know about, and carefully returned everything to the safe. The clock on the mantel read 4:30. In 90 minutes, guests would begin arriving for a party celebrating a marriage that had already been terminated in everything but name. Jennifer walked downstairs on legs that felt disconnected from her body. The house had been transformed into an elegant venue, candlelight and flowers, creating an atmosphere of romance and celebration. She could play along, smile through the evening, pretend she didn't know that her husband had methodically planned her destruction, or she could choose a different path, one that would shatter the illusion but preserve her dignity. She thought about Sophie's question that morning, about Marcus's hopeful face, about all the times she'd taught them that honesty mattered, that truth was important, even when it was difficult. She thought about the woman she used to be, before marble floors and society parties, when she believed her voice had value. Jennifer picked up her phone and made 3 calls, to her lawyer, to her sister, and to the event coordinator. Then she went upstairs to change, trading the silk blouse for jeans and a sweater, packing 2 suitcases with essentials for herself and the children. The decision crystallized in her mind with perfect clarity. She would not be erased. James arrived home at 6:15, irritation evident in his clipped steps as he entered through the garage. Jennifer stood in the foyer, flanked by her children, suitcases lined up by the door. The house was dark, the carefully arranged decorations casting strange shadows in the dimming light. "What the hell is this?" James demanded, his composure cracking as he took in the scene. "We have guests arriving in 45 minutes. "No, we don't," Jennifer replied, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "I cancelled the party. I told everyone you had a family emergency." James's face flushed red, the controlled facade slipping to reveal the anger beneath. "You did what? Do you have any idea how much money I've spent, how important tonight was?" "I found the papers, James," Jennifer said quietly, aware of Sophie and Marcus watching with frightened eyes. "The separation agreement, the asset transfers, all of it. Was tonight supposed to be your final performance before you had me served?" The silence that followed stretched like a wire pulled tight. James's expression shifted from anger to calculation, then to something cold and dismissive. "So you know," he said flatly. "Good. Saves me the trouble of explaining. You've been dead weight for years, Jennifer. I built this empire, not you. You just spent my money and played house." The words should have hurt, but Jennifer felt strangely numb, as if she were watching the scene from a distance. "And the woman in the photos?" "Cassandra understands what I need," James replied, not even having the decency to look ashamed. "A partner who's an asset, not a liability. Someone who contributes instead of just existing on my payroll." "Daddy, why are you being mean to Mommy?" Sophie's small voice cut through the tension like a knife. James finally looked at his daughter, and for a moment something flickered across his face. Regret, maybe, or just irritation at the complication. "Sophie, adults are talking. Go to your room." "No," Jennifer said firmly, placing her hands on both children's shoulders. "They stay with me. I'm their mother, and you don't get to dismiss us like we're nothing." James laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. "You think you have a choice here? I have lawyers, Jennifer, good ones. They'll destroy you in court. You'll be lucky to get supervised visitation." "Maybe," Jennifer acknowledged, "but I also have every document you hid in that safe, every fraudulent transfer, every asset you moved offshore to avoid taxes. I wonder how your investors would feel knowing you've been cooking the books." The color drained from James's face. "You're bluffing." Jennifer pulled out her phone, showed him the cloud storage confirmation. "Try me. I sent everything to my lawyer an hour ago. We can do this the easy way or the hard way, James. Joint custody, fair division of assets, or I make sure the IRS knows exactly where all your money went." For the first time in years, Jennifer saw real fear in her husband's eyes. But it lasted only a moment before his expression hardened into something cruel. "Fine," he said, his voice dripping with venom. "Take the ranch. That's all you're getting. That worthless piece of property in Kentucky with the falling down house and nothing else. No money, no support, nothing. Let's see how long you last without my credit cards and my name opening doors." "The ranch and joint custody," Jennifer countered. "And enough support for the children. That's not negotiable." James pulled out his phone, made a call. Within minutes, his lawyer was on speaker, drawing up terms on the spot. The ranch, $10,000. Joint custody with a flexible arrangement, and James's agreement not to contest the divorce. In exchange, Jennifer would sign a non-disclosure agreement and return the copied documents. "You'll fail," James said, as Jennifer signed the hastily printed papers his lawyer delivered within the hour. "You have no idea how to survive without me. That ranch is a dump. No electricity half the time. A house that should be condemned. You'll come crawling back within a month, begging me to take you back." Jennifer loaded the children into her SUV, the $10,000 check folded in her pocket, along with the deed to 300 acres in Hopkins County she'd never actually visited. James stood in the doorway of their Belmead mansion, backlit by the chandelier that cost more than most people earned in a year, watching them leave without a shred of emotion on his face. The drive to Kentucky took 4 hours through darkness, Sophie and Marcus sleeping in the back seat, while Jennifer's mind raced with questions she couldn't answer. What had she done? She'd burned her life down based on principle and pride, trading security for dignity, but was dignity enough to feed her children? They arrived at the ranch near midnight, the headlights illuminating a scene that made Jennifer's stomach drop. The house was a weathered 2-story structure that leaned slightly to one side, paint peeling, several windows broken and boarded up. The barn looked ready to collapse, and what might once have been a chicken coop tilted at a precarious angle. "Mummy, is this where we're staying?" Marcus asked groggily as Jennifer parked. "Yes, baby," Jennifer whispered, fighting back tears. "This is our new home." She carried the children inside, using her phone's flashlight to navigate rooms that smelled of dust and abandonment. She found a bedroom upstairs with an old mattress that seemed relatively clean, made a nest of blankets from the suitcases, and settled both children to sleep. Then Jennifer went downstairs and sat on the sagging porch, looking out at land she couldn't see in the darkness, and let herself cry. She'd chosen truth over comfort, principle over security, but the reality of that choice felt crushing in the cold October night. Morning came with brutal clarity. In daylight, the ranch looked even worse than Jennifer had imagined. The house desperately needed repairs, the barn had a hole in the roof, and the property was overgrown with weeds and neglect. But there was also a strange beauty to it. Rolling hills dotted with autumn trees, a creek running along the eastern border, and a silence so complete it made her ears ring after years of city noise. The children woke hungry and confused, asking questions Jennifer couldn't answer. Where was their house? When were they going back to school? Why had Daddy said those mean things? Jennifer found the kitchen barely functional, a gas stove that worked sporadically, a refrigerator that hummed but didn't cool, and plumbing that coughed brown water before running clear. She'd stopped at a grocery store during the drive, buying basics with James's credit card one last time, but she knew that access would be cut off soon. "We're having an adventure," she told Sophie and Marcus as they ate cereal with warm milk at a wobbly kitchen table. "We're going to fix up Grandma's ranch and make it beautiful again." "I don't like this adventure," Sophie said quietly. "I want to go home." Jennifer pulled her daughter close, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. "I know, sweetheart, but sometimes we have to be brave and do hard things. Can you be brave with me?" The first week was a crash course in rural survival. Jennifer discovered the water came from a well that required priming, the heat came from a wood stove she didn't know how to operate, and the nearest neighbor was 3 miles away. She enrolled the children in the local elementary school, where they stood out in their designer clothes among farm kids in jeans and work boots. Money became an immediate concern. The $10,000 seemed like a lot, until Jennifer calculated rent, food, utilities, and repairs. She had no job, no nearby employment prospects, and 2 children who needed stability she couldn't provide. On the 8th day, Jennifer was attempting to repair a broken porch step when a pickup truck pulled into the driveway. A woman in her 60s climbed out, her weathered face breaking into a smile. "You must be Betty's granddaughter," she said, extending a calloused hand. "I'm Margaret Hodges. I live at the next ranch over. Heard you'd moved in." Margaret surveyed the property with knowing eyes. "Your grandma's place needs work, but the bones are good. Betty was too old to maintain it in her last years, but it used to be real nice. I don't know what I'm doing, Jennifer admitted, the words spilling out before she could stop them. I don't know how to fix anything, how to run a ranch, how to make this work. Margaret's expression softened. Nobody does at first, but you learn. Country life teaches you if you're willing. She returned the next morning with her husband, Tom, a taciturn man who immediately started repairing the worst of the structural issues. Margaret brought supplies, eggs from her chickens, vegetables from her garden, and practical knowledge about rural living that Jennifer absorbed desperately. You'll need animals eventually, Margaret said, surveying the empty barn. Chickens are the easiest start. They'll give you eggs to eat and sell. Jennifer's pride wanted to refuse charity, but practicality won. When Margaret showed up the following week with 5 chickens in crates, Jennifer accepted them gratefully, learning how to feed them, collect eggs, and keep the coop predator-proof. The children adjusted in ways that surprised her. Marcus loved the chickens, naming each one and spending hours watching them scratch in the dirt. Sophie remained withdrawn, angry at the life that had been taken from her, but even she showed moments of interest, asking to help garden, learning to identify birds, running through the fields with an abandon she'd never shown in their manicured Belle Meade yard. Jennifer discovered muscles she didn't know she had, learned skills she'd never imagined needing. She repaired fences, cleared brush, painted walls, and slowly transformed the house from derelict to livable. Her hands developed calluses, her skin tanned from constant outdoor work, and her body grew strong from physical labor, but the money continued to drain away. By week 6, Jennifer had $4,000 left and no clear path to income. The ranch wasn't productive enough to support them, and leaving the property for a job meant childcare she couldn't afford. The solution came from an unexpected source. Tom and Margaret hosted a Saturday farmers market in town, and Margaret suggested Jennifer sell eggs and preserves she'd taught Jennifer to make from wild blackberries growing on the property. Jennifer stood behind a folding table that first Saturday, feeling exposed and vulnerable as Nashville society matrons might feel working a checkout counter. But rural Kentucky operated differently than Belle Meade. People didn't care about designer labels or social standing. They cared about quality eggs and friendly service. "You're Betty's granddaughter," an elderly man said, buying 24 eggs. "She was good people. Glad someone's working the land again." Jennifer sold out of eggs by noon, made $80 and felt more accomplished than she had closing any marketing deal in her previous life. It wasn't enough to live on, but it was a start. Proof that she could survive, that her choice to leave hadn't been suicidal foolishness. Winter arrived with unexpected harshness, testing everything Jennifer had learned. The old house leaked heat faster than the wood stove could generate it. Pipes froze despite her best efforts, and keeping chickens alive through freezing temperatures required constant vigilance. But Jennifer discovered reservoirs of strength she hadn't known existed. When the power went out for 3 days during an ice storm, she kept her children warm and fed using skills Margaret had taught her. When Sophie developed a fever, she drove through dangerous roads to the nearest clinic, where a kind doctor treated them despite Jennifer's inability to pay immediately. The community revealed itself in layers. Tom and Margaret became surrogate grandparents, teaching practical skills and providing backup when Jennifer struggled. Other neighbors emerged, farmers who needed temporary help during harvest, offering cash for hard work, women who invited Sophie and Marcus for playdates, giving Jennifer breathing room, a retired teacher who tutored the children when Jennifer couldn't afford materials. By spring, the ranch had transformed. Jennifer had expanded the chicken operation to 20 birds, started a vegetable garden that would feed them through summer, and begun selling produce at the farmers market alongside eggs. She'd learned to fix almost anything, plumbing, electrical, carpentry, through necessity and YouTube tutorials accessed on her phone. The children blossomed in ways that surprised her. Marcus, once shy and anxious, became confident and curious, learning about animals and plants with passionate intensity. Sophie, after months of anger, began to open up, writing poetry about the land and drawing pictures of the life they were building. "Mommy, I don't miss the old house anymore," Sophie confessed one evening as they sat on the repaired porch, watching sunset paint the hills gold. "Is that bad?" Jennifer pulled her daughter close. "No, sweetheart. It means you're growing. We both are." James contacted her occasionally through lawyers, phone calls dripping with condescension. "Ready to admit you made a mistake yet?" he'd ask. "Ready to come back to civilization?" But Jennifer found she had no desire to return to the life she'd left. The ranch demanded everything from her: time, energy, physical strength, but it gave back something she'd lost in Belle Meade: purpose. She was building something real, creating value with her own hands, teaching her children that worth wasn't measured in bank balances or social status. By summer, Jennifer had built a sustainable operation. She sold eggs, vegetables, and preserves at 3 farmers' markets weekly, cleared $800 monthly. Not wealth by any standard, but enough combined with child support to cover expenses and slowly improve the property. She'd become part of the community, known not as James Matthews' ex-wife but as Jennifer Hayes, the woman who'd reclaimed her grandmother's ranch. One August afternoon, Margaret brought unexpected news. "There's a journalist from Louisville here writing about small farms. She wants to interview you." The article appeared in the state's largest paper 2 weeks later, titled "From Mansion to Farmhouse: One Woman's Journey to Authentic Living." It detailed Jennifer's transition from Nashville society to rural Kentucky, framing her choice as courageous rather than desperate. James called within hours of publication, furious. "You're making me look like the villain," he raged, telling our private business to reporters. "I didn't mention you," Jennifer replied calmly. "The story is about me, about what I've built. You're not part of this narrative anymore, James." The silence on the other end spoke volumes. For years, James had defined her worth, determined her value based on how well she reflected his success. But she'd discovered a different measure of worth, one based on resilience, community, and the satisfaction of creating something meaningful from nothing. The article brought unexpected opportunities. A food blogger visited, writing about Jennifer's preserves and creating demand that exceeded her capacity to produce. A Nashville boutique wanted to sell her products, offering wholesale prices that could substantially increase income. A producer contacted her about a possible documentary on women rebuilding lives after divorce. Jennifer considered each opportunity carefully, accepting some and declining others. She'd learned that not all growth was good, that maintaining balance mattered more than maximizing profit. The ranch supported them comfortably now, the children thrived in rural school, and she'd built a life that felt honest in ways her previous existence never had. One October evening, exactly 1 year after she'd cancelled the anniversary party and driven away from Belle Meade, Jennifer stood on her porch, watching Sophie and Marcus chase fireflies through the dusk. The house stood straight and strong, freshly painted with a new roof and functioning systems. The barn housed not just chickens, but also 2 goats the children had begged for, and the garden overflowed with late-season abundance. James had given her this ranch intending it as punishment, as proof she couldn't survive without him. He'd been wrong. The ranch hadn't broken her. It had revealed strength she'd suppressed for years, reconnected her to parts of herself she'd forgotten existed. Her phone rang, an unknown number. Jennifer almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Jennifer, it's Cassandra." The voice was young, uncertain. James's, the woman he was seeing. Jennifer's stomach tightened. "What do you want?" "To warn you," Cassandra said quietly. "He's planning something. I heard him on the phone with his lawyers talking about custody, about proving you're an unfit mother because you're living in poverty. He's going to try to take the kids." Jennifer looked at her children, at the life they'd built, and felt something fierce and protective surge through her. "Let him try," she said. "This isn't poverty. This is freedom. And I'm not the same woman who left Nashville a year ago." She thanked Cassandra and hung up, then called her lawyer. If James wanted another fight, she'd give him one. But this time she'd be fighting from solid ground, surrounded by community, with proof that her children were thriving in ways they never had in Belle Meade's cold perfection. The sun set over the hills, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. Jennifer called the children inside, served dinner from vegetables they'd grown and eggs their chickens had laid, and listened to them chatter about school projects and chicken behavior and all the small, important details of their expanding world. James had meant the ranch as punishment, had given her 5 chickens and 2 kids like it was a sentence to poverty and failure. But he'd accidentally given her something far more valuable, the opportunity to discover who she was when everything was stripped away except what mattered most. She'd found herself in the hard work and the quiet nights, in the community that supported without judgment, in the satisfaction of creating value with her own hands. "Mommy, are we rich now?" Marcus asked, his face smeared with berry juice from dessert. Jennifer smiled, pulling both children close. "We have everything we need, baby." And that makes us the richest people I know. Outside, the chickens settled in their coop for the night, safe and content. The ranch that was supposed to represent Jennifer's failure had instead become the foundation of her freedom, proof that worth couldn't be measured in mansions or bank accounts, but in the strength to choose truth over comfort, dignity over security, and authentic living over beautiful illusions.